Alright, sorry about that. I had to fix that. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so welcome back to One Punch Man anime review, episode number 41. We're reviewing the episode 36 of the series, which is the end of Cour 1 of One Punch Man. Skeletal Life Form. I'm still baffled by that. The fact that we're getting a Cour 2 for this, given the reception that the animation has gotten about the first half of the season. Though the animation did get better. I'll get to more of the stuff that later on, but let's talk about the episode in a nutshell. We start off with King, Silverfang, his brother, and Buzzard just walking through a hallway. King is very, very nervous. And, of course, well, Buzzard talks to him. And you're like, oh, you're very nervous? Like, how about him being invincible? Despite the fact he's actually not. Even he knows he's not invincible. Like it was downright stated, basically, if you watch the show, like, during Season 2, was brought up about the fact that he is not very strong. He is very weak. It's just that people credit him being strong because of Saitama. And of course, he's just like, where is Saitama? We'll see him. And then they split two groups, so he's very nervous. So he apparently goes off by himself. Later on, post-credits, we see him come across what appears to be one guy that was the kidnapped kid who was rescued by Child Emperor. But this turns out to be a monster. Poses him, and he turns to goo. That was a post-credit scene. And that's why I see King the whole episode, because right after that scene when King goes off on his own, we then see Saitama. He's like walking through the hallway, and he hands punches to some monsters. He takes down basically Poochie with one punch. And before we continue with this, there's a couple other scenes here. One is Pig Guy Fish eating one monster, and then another monster eats him. He punches out, and then he fights another monster. And then we cut to, they call him Black Luster. It's a Super Dark Ally. He's fighting off against an insect god. Apparently he fought once before. It's like, oh, getting really strong, and then he beats one punch. And that's it for that. And then, right afterwards, with Saitama creating all these quakes all over the place with his punches. By the way, no one knows it's Saitama. No one knows. And Giro thinks, like, oh, it must be somebody else. He does not suspect him at all. And then, before we get to the really cool moment here, which I do not blame. Now, I'm going to forewarn you, basically, about what happens after this next scene here, because it is not JC's staff's fault. It's actually one's fault for that next scene here. So then we have Giro taking on Terrible Twister. Tries to cut his power, and then she breaks and very much almost virtually destroys his body. And he's like, Lord Orochi, can I get some help, please? And this is kind of weird, though. He's supposed to be the military strategist, and he's bossing around the boss. Does anybody find that make any sense? No, not really. It turns out he is distracted by Saitama, because apparently Saitama's big punch created a big hole in the wall. And then he's like, oh yeah, I was formerly human. He's like, I don't give a crap about that. I'll beat you in one punch. And he does, with a normal punch. And he beats him. And then he walks off. Now, if you're curious here about this moment here, Saitama versus Orochi, and it's over that quickly. I should point out, though, this is actually not the fault of JC Staff for this. Oh no, it is not their fault with this scene. Like, do not raise a pitchfork to them about this particular scene, because, nope, not their fault. It's actually the fault of one, the creator of the series. It is his fault that the de facto leader, that the puppet leader of the organization of the Monster Association needs to be with one punch. It is his fault. So, just don't raise pitchforks to JC Staff over that. And then Saitama goes off, and then the post-credits scene happens a few minutes later, and that's Cour 1. That's it. Now, there's also a flashback here of Now, it's a slight change in the manga here. They adapted one of the short stories here for this episode, Cell the King, which in the manga, they have it where Saitama finds a magazine about King. In the anime, you have King reading his own magazine in the Hero HQ. Now, what this adapts is quite interesting because it took me a while to find out the names, to find out placement of these things. So, this adapts from chapters. The first 11 pages, chapter 111, basically stop where pig guys take on that one monster. Pages 13 and 16 of chapter 112. 113, chapters 126, 26 to 46. 114, 115, which is basically chapters, pages 11 to 12 and 12 to 27. One page, kind of 117, and the one shot. Now, I enjoy what the dub did. I think the dub did a great job, in my honest opinion. But I should address basically the biggest thing people had issue with this season. The animation. Because I heard a ton of... Before the first episode dub was ever released, I heard a lot of whining and complaining about, oh, this animation is terrible. Like, and the fact that before the season came out, when they released the trailers for it, they were complaining like crazy online about this. The director said, basically, calm down. And then another director quit the show because of all the backlash for animation. Now, of course, the animation season 2 also got backlash too. But it wasn't as bad as this. That one, the complaint for that one, it's like, oh, season 2 took a dip in animation because how King looked. And I look at Madhouse animation, I look at JC Staff animation, I'm like, not much difference. Just the color is a bit lighter under JC Staff compared to Madhouse. And I get the fact, yes, people are mad at Madhouse. All with the fact that they chose not to do seasons 2 and 3. And also people were like, there was also a rumor before the season came out that One Piece, that One Punch Man season 3 was going to switch to studios because they really did not want JC. Some people did not want JC Staff through season 2 because people thought that the whole thing. Oh, by the way, also Laura Rochi basically brought up in the actual episodes of all the monsters basically that were defeated and with Saitama. But yeah, you know him. Yep. No, I don't remember it per se. But I mean, the biggest issue with the season is not the writing or the adaptation. Or the voice acting, I have no complaints about that stuff. It's the animation. And the one scene, there was a couple scenes basically, I heard about one big issue we have with them. One is scene between Saitama and Hellish Buzzard, where they're at a diner. And they describe the scene as very stiff. And I'm like... I watched the episode this happened. I think it was like the second, third episode season, I think it was. And I read the manga. Looked fine. From what I can tell. Now, my personal guess is that the terrible animation must have been on people probably don't have Hulu, so they'll watch it on official websites. That's probably where they're seeing it. And of course, I do know about the one panel man. We see Garo just crawling down a hill. Yes, I do know about that one because someone showed me that. I didn't see that in the episode. That was probably some other source they got that from because it was not the episode I watched. Now, I watched this entire season on Hulu. Hulu does not have the bad animation because I put this out there when it comes to... I mentioned to a couple friends of mine about this when it comes to this season. That... The only reason why I haven't seen the terrible animation is because, and this is my personal theory on the matter, and a friend of mine, Jay, he actually buys my theory about this, that this is a possibility. Hulu themselves are fixing animation problems. Yes, Hulu, the streaming service, the one who's streaming this show, is fixing it. That is my personal guess, anyways. What happened, of why it looks better than what people thought it would be. That is my personal guess, anyways. I've not heard anybody say anything yes or no about it. But that is how I felt about it. Is that I think the reason why I didn't see it, what everybody's been complaining about, is because Hulu. Hulu is probably fixing it. Now, the weird thing is, when it comes to season, was that in the U.S., and they did this also for Bleach as well for some reason, for Bleach Dynasty Blood War, they decided to release in U.S. only on Hulu and Disney Plus internationally, which was not a good move. Now, the thing is, that is probably Disney's fault because they own Hulu. I'm like, why didn't you just put it on Hulu? You own it too. And I've heard rumblings that this year, possibly, that the streaming service is going to shut down. If that's the case, where are people going to watch One Punch Man? Or Bleach Dynasty of Blood War when it comes out? Like, all I heard, because I heard that it was confirmed it's going to be shutting down, the streaming service. But, the thing is, the only thing that I know about it is supposed to be sometime this year, so it's shut down. If that's the case, then, and like, where's Bleach Dynasty of Blood War One Punch Man Season 3 Part 2 supposed to go? Because here's kind of the thing, okay? Not every country has Disney Plus. I've heard Canada does have Disney Plus, yes, but do they have? Do other countries have Disney Plus? Not necessarily. No, people have Hulu more than Disney Plus, and that the theory is of why the Hulu is shutting down. It's not because that Disney bought it completely. That was not the reason why. The reason why Disney wants to shut down Hulu, despite the fact that ESPN, they own that too. The reason why I think that they want to shut it down because Disney Plus is losing subscribers and they want the Hulu subscribers. Even though that there is a package out there to get all 3 streaming services. Basically that's Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN. Though the Unlimited app is not part of that whole thing. The whole thing with that app is so confusing. That I did kind of sign in with that. And because I was to watch the Royal Rumble on Hulu. Yes, on Hulu. Yeah, the whole thing with that was such a mess with that. But in the case of what this season was, I think it was good overall. I think now the theory is, now there's also been a picture put out there of Saitama versus Giru, where for the tease for season 3 part 2, that they pretty much used the same images for this first part, and they swapped positions. Yes, I've heard about it. People say that it happened. I can kind of buy that. Yes, I did hear about that. So. Well, at least the season now, I guess I could probably theorize of the reason why we're going to get season part 2. And here is my thinking of the reason for it. The reason? There's a whole lot of manga to adapt. Tons of chapters. Probably because also it had been, like prior to last year, it had been 8 years since they released season 2. So, I guess that JC's had probably felt this, so And they figure when the fans are getting close to the scene, he's like, we still have plenty of chapters to adapt here. Part 2. Yeah. That's probably the reason why we're getting part 2. It's not because basically they want to properly adapt Giru versus Saitama. I don't think that's the reason. I think it's because they have a lot more material to adapt than they thought they did. Yeah. But the answer to the obvious one, the first season adapted the first 36 chapters. That's what they adapted over the course of the entire first season of the show. What about this season? Well, basically they adapted, let's see. Excuse me. I'm looking through the episodes right now to see how much of the manga they adapted, because they started the season off with, I think it was chapter 86. Yes, 86. Oh, it was 2019. Okay, my mistake. It was 2019 when the episode was released. So the last season covered chapters 37 to 85. Yes, that's how much they adapted, which that's roughly... Oh my gosh, I think it's like 50 chapters, I think it is? Yeah, I think it's almost 50 chapters. No. Wait. Yeah, it is 50. Yeah, 50 chapter season 2. So we started up with 86. Now, does the anime skip any chapters throughout this whole season? I'm looking through right now, see if they skipped anything per se, like when any chapter skipped over, and I'm looking right now. I would say some pages skipped over for page 96, chapter 96, but they did a lot of that chapter. 114 pages, long chapter. So, by the time they get to the last episode, 36, well, I think in the case of chapter 107, they didn't adapt this full chapter. No, they did not. It's not the full chapter adapted. No, it is pretty much pages 14 to 33 didn't adapt to wholly, but it did adapt pretty much wholly for, like, I would say from chapter 86 to 106. So, in roughly, since this was the 10th, so in 10 episodes, they pretty much covered 21 chapters. Yeah, 21. 22, 23, I'd say like 24, 25, 26. I'd say 26 chapters, which that's actually less than last season. Well, there were some chapters adapted from last season that were like over 100 pages. Yes, that's the weird thing with One Punch Man, is that some chapters are 20, 30 pages, some are 60 pages, some are over 100 pages. And that's not a joke, that seriously is true. Like, I saw one chapter like 114 pages. It's just how much one puts out. And there's no set schedule with the release of One Punch Man, so I will continue reading the One Punch Man manga. That I will. So basically, next time we see a One Punch Man review, after this, will be whenever they release a new chapter of the manga. So, there's that. So that's pretty much that particular video. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications. Next up we have is One Piece, and the next is on to Project Red. Okay, next video. Bye.